I work a lot with young people, with Gen Z, and something that they really struggle with in the workplace is just this forming connections with people at work, particularly people who are more senior than them. You know, they're young, everyone is more senior and more experienced than them. So this idea of
Mm.
everyone's quite intimidating. They want to be respectful, but they also want to, form these social connections. Do you have any advice for young people in terms of how they can have conversations at work?
Yeah. Whether it's young people or older people, one thing that they can do that is going to increase the social interactions that they have and improve their status within any organization is to become the student. Whenever you are talking to somebody, particularly if they are a next level above you, supervising, manager, whatever it is, become the student. And here's what I mean. When you come into conversation with them and maybe you're curious about how you want to get promoted or what you want to do or what you want, instead of coming in with your list of demands, you become the student. Ask questions about how they got there. People love to tell stories, Sophie. So if let's say you're upper management and I set some time aside, this is key. I'm not just randomly coming into your office. I've already emailed, we've set aside 10 minutes for me to come by, have a quick chat. I'm going to begin with, so what did you do in your time here? Do you feel like really made a difference in your impact? Or what did you feel really brought you to the next level? How did you know that this was the place for you? Asking questions that put you as the student and you're writing down notes because that gets them to talk. You hear how if, let's say, Sophie, I wanted to talk to you about a raise and I sat down and I said, hey, look, so I've been doing some research here and I think I should be paid more. And if I'm not paid more, I don't know if this is the place for me. You hear how all of a sudden it separates immediately this us versus you. You're going to start feeling like I'm part of the company, the organization, and you're now the outcast because you're making a list of demands. Or maybe you're trying to, not in a threatening way, but now you're putting me in a tight spot. We tend to think that all managers are unlike us and all employees are unlike the managers. So, for example, when I was at my first law firm, and this happens everywhere, I started as an associate. That's what they're called, associates at a law firm. There's associates and partners. When I was an associate, I would complain about the partners all the time. I'd say, these partners, they don't get us. They don't understand. They blah, blah, blah. They're on their own world. And the day that I became a partner, Sophie, I got an email from an associate and I was like, these associates, all they do is whine and complain. Like you have this way of just flipping it, right? Of acting like they're not, all of a sudden, they're not the same person. They're not human. They're unlike you. So when you ask yourself, instead of coming in with your list of demands, saying, so when you were in my position, what did you find to be the best way to increase your salary? Or if you wanted to increase your salary in my position, what would you do? Become the student and people will be glad to teach you. Why? Because they love to talk about how they got there. They love to tell a story about themselves.
It's so true. I think with these, six generations in a workplace right now, and there's a lot of like us versus them going on. Just something you said in that, we're all just humans, and it's like putting yourself on the same level, but wanting to, approaching it with curiosity, and, every conversation is something you can learn from. It immediately makes that person feel less intimidating to me because it's just like you're just learning from the experience. I love that. We're going to get now, Jefferson, into some of our most requested scenarios. So we went out to our community, and these are the things that they really want your help with. So we'll get through as many of these as we can, but I'd love
Okay.
just some quick advice and maybe one of your beautiful phrases. You're so good at these phrases or these sentence starters. So I'm just going to go through some of these scenarios now. So the first scenario is you want to keep communication constructive, but you're feeling triggered or angry in the workplace.
Yeah. So I would use the phrase, I can tell, rather than acting upon that trigger. You're going to, what I say is when you claim it, you control it, Sophie. Meaning, if I'm feeling defensive over something that you said or frustrated, instead of me acting frustrated, which might be me just, sighing, letting out a big breath, throwing out my hands, that's acting on frustration. That's not emotional intelligence. Instead, when you claim it, you control it, meaning I'm going to say out loud, I can tell that's I can tell that makes me frustrated. I can tell I'm getting frustrated. Like that's you grabbing that emotion, looking at it, and then putting it on the table and still being engaged in the conversation. And that shows so much emotional maturity in conversation when you can say something like, I can tell I'm not ready for this conversation. I can tell I need a timeout. I can tell that, I can tell I'm getting defensive. I can tell is a wonderful way of grabbing your own emotions, having control over them, and then more importantly, showing to the other person their effect without you unleashing them on them.
I can instantly imagine using that at work. I think that's what I love so much about the way that you phrase things. So many other experts and even myself sometimes, like you hear them say things and you're like, nah, I would never say that. But I can, it's so human. It's so right. And yeah, it's like you're claiming you're owning what you can own, which is how you're feeling, and you're just putting it out there so that they know. I love that. The next one
That's
is
right.
this is a really big one, especially for me, but for a lot of people. How to stop over talking when you're in a one to one with your manager.
Mm. There is one tool that I teach when it comes to over talking or over explaining. It's this mindset. Don't be a waterfall, be a well. So rather than feeling like you have to give all the information. There's this feeling we have to give all the context. What happens when we over explain, it's almost the opposite effect. It's this idea of the more words it takes to tell the truth, the more it sounds like a lie. The more you explain, the longer it takes you to get to the point, the more it sounds like you may not know exactly what you're talking about. So instead, you want to think of yourself as a well. That means short responses. And if somebody else has a question, they will ask. I teach this to when I prepare my clients for depositions and cross examinations. I say, when you answer, only answer the question. Keep it short and brief and sweet because the longer your answer, I can be rest assured the more questions they're going to get. So rather than being a waterfall, be a well.
Oh my God, it's so true, especially when you are communicating with senior leaders. We feel nervous. They ask us a question after our presentation and we'll want to talk for like 3 paragraphs. And really, they wanted like,
Right.
it's launching in June, you know?
Exactly. They wanted 3 words. That was it.
How
Yeah.
do you just a trick because silence and pausing is so important. Do you have any tricks? But I find it so hard. Like I'm still trying to learn to pause when I talk. Any tips
Yeah.
or advice for learning to be silent?
Yes. And I teach this to every single one of my clients. Before you respond, or when somebody is saying something you don't like and you can feel yourself starting to get heated up, use what I call a conversational breath. And this is kind of the rule I teach. Let your breath be the first word that you say. So it helps, meaning your first word would be in your response. The very first word, you're going to put a breath in its place. And there is such a peace and power and control that you feel when you understand, Sophie, that you control the pace of the conversation. You are in control of the pace, the speed of the conversation. It cannot happen any faster than you respond. And the person that shows most control of the pace is the person who also shows themselves to be most control of themselves.
Yeah.
And I love this rule because you can hear the difference. If you were to ask me, "Hey Jefferson, how was your day?" And I immediately said, "It was good. I mean, it was real good. I mean, yeah, it was good. It was good, Sophie." It doesn't really sound like I listened to it, right? It didn't really sound like I engaged and
Thought
thought about
about
your
it.
question.
Yeah.
Now, if you asked me how was your day, and I took a breath and thought about it, and I said, "It was good." You know what? It was good. You believe that answer now because I listened, I acknowledged, I took it in, and I thought about it and I chewed on it. So, people who, like in an interview, when somebody has a rapid fire response, it's usually telling that they're not listening. Same thing I see in the courtroom. But the person who, in an interview, you get a question and you take a beat, 2 seconds, 3 seconds to actually take a breath It shows that I have the control and maturity to actually think about this before I respond. Those are the
Yeah.
people that are more trusted.
Oh, man, I think about every communicator that I've worked with that I really admire, and they do that. You're just like, "Wow, they're really thinking about this." Um, next one is how to sound more confident than I feel. So you spoke before about confidence being a feeling. How do you, if you don't feel confident,
Yeah.
but you want to sound confident, any tips for sounding more confident than you feel?
Yes. Here's a phrase. And by the way, we didn't rehearse these for anybody listening. We're just rolling with these as we're going. Uh, here's a phrase you're gonna like for anybody who feels like, I don't feel that confident, but I want to sound confident. Is you just use the word confident. So instead of saying I think so or I believe so, you simply switch it to I'm confident that. So if you were to, let's say you're interviewing me, Sophie, and you said, do you think you'd be a good part of this company? And I could respond, I think I would. I think I would. I think I'd be a very valued member. Versus me saying, I'm confident I bring a lot of value to this company. Which you know what they're going to write on their notes? They're going to say this person is so confident and underline it. I mean, that's just all you need to do is use the word, and they will naturally align you with the feeling of confidence.
Instantly, everyone listening, this is something that you can
Yeah.
do today. I absolutely love that. All right, giving this is probably the hardest one. So I'm possibly setting you up for complete failure here because I actually think this is probably the hardest thing you can do at work. Giving feedback to someone who's more senior than you. How any advice you can give us on this one?
So yeah, let's put it in some context. You say somebody is ahead of you in some kind of
Yeah,
managerial role, and you need to give them.
yeah, exactly. So let's say it's someone who is more senior than you, but maybe they're on another team. So maybe let's say it's not your direct manager. You're working with them on a project and you don't like the way that they're interacting with the rest of the people on the project, for example. You need to give them some feedback on that.
Oh, interesting. So I'm going to give a thought on feedback that can be almost universally applied. That I think
Hmm.
your listeners will find a little bit more very practical.
Yeah.
Is whenever you need to give feedback with somebody, you need to detach the personal as best you can. So if you were going to ask me to give you feedback on your proposal, Sophie, and I said, you know what, your proposal really doesn't make all that much sense to me, truthfully. I mean, I think it's kind of confusing. Now you're going to all of a sudden probably get defensive of that because I used the word your. But if I use the word the and I detach it as if it's its own separate entity, where I was going to give you feedback and I said something along the lines of, the proposal could benefit from some clarity. I mean, I got through it fine, but the proposal could be a little bit better. You hear all of a sudden, you're not going to find that you're going to take nearly as personally because
Yeah.
it's not you, it's not your. And second of all, when you can add on to it. So let's say it's your proposal, and I said, instead of this, like, it was good, it was really good. And all of a sudden, a negative's coming. Instead of that, use language that adds on to it. So just switch the word but for the word and. So it could be as simple as, no, I really liked it. And what I think would make it even better, Sophie, is if you did X, Y, and Z. So when I use that, when I add on to it, and what would be really cool is if idea, whatever it is, it's now all of a sudden it's like we're working on it together rather than me saying it's great, but I would prefer it have this on it.
There's so
Now you're not
many
taking away from it. Now I'm not making it personal.
I love that because I'm connecting so many things right now that you've said, which is this idea that it's not me versus you. Put yourself on the same side and the problem on the other. It is this idea that the flipping it. So don't start with the good thing and then say, but you want to be, back to the assertive language. You want to build. So you want to like, what could you add, or and you kind of use that versus just saying, I don't like it, and then also not making it personal. It's about the work, not about them. So keep it focused on the work or the thing, and not about them as a person. So good.
Yeah.
All right.
And you can do that even with let's say if it's somebody's words, instead of saying your words, you could do the emails that I get, the language that I'm receiving, the words that I'm hearing. I mean, you can still say the words that I get in this office are not nearly as uplifting as I need them to be. Like there's always a way to detach the personal. That's the point. That's going to get you a whole lot farther when it comes to feedback.
That's clever because I actually thought, I've set him up for failure because I've given him an example of an executive kind of interacting with humans. How do you separate that? It's not actually like a work or a document that they made, but you just did it. So it's like the words that they're saying or the vibe they're
Yeah.
creating in the room, whatever. You just focus on that. I love it. All right. The last one, you want to push back on someone, but you don't want to sound difficult. Any phrases we can use for this one?
Hmm. There's a phrase that you can use anytime that you disagree with someone without feeling like you have to be rude about it or up in their face. And it's this: I see things differently. You want to disagree with someone, instead of going, I disagree, and they're going to get defensive, the spikes are going to come out. Instead, you say, I see things differently, or I take another approach, or I have a different perspective. People don't get defensive when you use words of vision of something you see. So, what you're doing is you are not criticizing their point. That's what we typically do. We say
Mm.
we want to argue their point, but they could actually have a point. It's just the problem is their point isn't yours, and you think your point is better. Instead of arguing the point, argue the perspective. And all you're doing is just saying where I'm sitting, I see something different than what you see when you're sitting over there. And people are much more prone to go, oh, okay, what do you see? Versus, or are you saying I'm wrong? I could never be wrong. And they get really defensive over that. So a very easy way to do it is just say, I see things differently.
It's so true because also that is most of why we do disagree at work a lot of the time. We are coming from different perspectives. We've had different data, we work on different projects, we come from different teams. So that is just like the truth. I absolutely love that. All right, we're going to bring this home now. Jefferson, because I know you got to get off the call. Very quickly, any tips for making this stick? I feel like I've just learnt so much and I really want people to be able to create some change after listening to this episode. How can we actually make some of this stick?
Well, everybody's a little different. So up to their personal taste. But what I have found is you try to only remember one point. So just pick one thing that Sophie and I discussed. If you can, write it down. And why? Because that just gives you another outlet of absorption rather than just listening. You're now writing it out and seeing it visually. If you can, maybe you're a doodler and you like to draw things out, put it on a sticky note, whatever it is. And then I think it's wonderful to get maybe what we would call an accountability partner, somebody that you can talk to, a best friend that you can say, hey, look, I'm really trying to work on my over apologizing. Just if you hear me say I'm sorry, just tell me, or whatever it is, try and fix it in your next text, in your next email, all of that. It's just one quick way of trying to apply one rule at a time.
I need that accountability partner to help me stop saying sorry.
I'm here for
Um,
you. I'm here for you.
love it. And finally, very quickly, I want you to give us one tip for each of these three things that I'm going to tell you, and this is something our listeners can start doing tomorrow to be better. So, what is something our listeners can start doing to be a better coworker?
More genuine questions. When somebody shares their weekend with you, instead of immediately start sharing your own, ask them one question, any question. You could say, "What was your favorite part?" Or eh, what was the funniest moment? Or what were you most excited about? Um, any of that, just asking one question rather than trying to steal somebody's thunder and compete with who had the better weekend.
Oh my god, I love that. Okay, one thing we can start doing to be a better life partner.
Be quick to apologize and to correct intention. So the longer you hold on to apologizing, the more resentment is created. Instead, be very quick to say what your intention was. Say, no, that wasn't my intent. My intention was to say blah, 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 blah. And the other person was go, oh, well, what I interpreted was blah, 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 blah. So the quicker you can get to intentions, it's like it's pulling away the curtain a lot faster instead of just expecting the other person to understand what you meant or pick up on something. So instead of having these unsaid, unvoiced expectations, get in the habit of revealing your intentions sooner when conflict happens.
Oh, intentions are so good. And then the final one, it's something we can do to start being a better parent.
Oh, be a safe space as much as you can. So when your kid is coming to you and they've done something wrong, instead of going, "How could you possibly do this?" and "What's wrong with you?" and exploding and yelling, all you're doing is telling them, when you've done something wrong, do not come to me. Bad things happen when you come to dad. Bad things happen when you come to mom. And fast forward when they're going to be 16, 17, 18, and they're really going to be doing some bad things, they're not going to want to come to you. And that's the last place I want to be in my life, is when my kids, if my kids ever feel like they can't come tell me when they do something wrong, I want to be the next person they come to.
That is incredibly beautiful. Jefferson, closing thought from you. Anything else that you think is important for our listeners to know before we wrap up?
I just want them to know that they can really change anything. If they felt like their communication is not where they want it to be, well, they can change all of it. And the next conversation is exactly what I out. It's why I wrote the book, is because you don't have to worry and fret over how you handle the last conversation. You can change everything about your life simply by what you decide to say next in the next conversation.
I couldn't agree more. And this is why I think communication should be a core subject taught at school. Jefferson, this was an unreal conversation. Thank you so much for giving us your time and your wisdom today.
Oh my goodness, I'm honored to be on. Thank you so much.